Scrambled eggs, bacon?
No, nothing.
I can find one. Bandolier.
Oh, a bandolier, of course. Bandolier. Yes, a big green tick appears, and you have £50 on the front of your desk. Do you want to make it 100?
Nope, pass.
Nope.
Thank you very much.
There are 3 answers there, any one of which could make your total bank balance into £200, Jenny.
Oh, I'll go for surcingle.
A surcingle. Yes, is that a belt you can wear, a surcingle? Well, yes, it is. It's a belt worn with a cassock.
Pass.
2 correct answers, Penny. You're £200 in danger because there's 5 wipeouts on the grid.
Oh, wait a minute.
Oh, dear.
A cestus.
A cestus. Well, it doesn't sound like anything I've ever heard of that you can't wear.
Over to the others.
Why should one not wear a cestus? One certainly can wear a cestus. It's all girdle, formerly worn by a bride and by Aphrodite.
Chastity belt.
If you feel delightfully beautiful, with £250 in the bank, and passing, I suspect, to our Barry.
Yes, please.
Barry, which is the one correct answer?
Oil belt.
You say oil belt. If oil belt is right, you'll have £100 in the bank. If you're wrong about oil belt, you go straight down, boom, to the bottom of the belt. An oil belt is a belted country yielding mineral oil. I'm very sorry about that.
Oh, my.
Jenny, I'm sure you... Oh, dear. Jenny, 4 wipeouts on the grid, 1 correct answer. Conveyor belt, Orion's belt, rust belt, shelter belt, dog belt.
Dog belt.
You say dog belt. If you're right, you'll have £250 in the bank. If you're wrong, you'll have 0. Dog belt. Well done. Well, Barry, alas, has nothing in the bank at this stage, but there's another grid to come in the first round. Whereas Jenny and Penny and Jenny, have £250 apiece. Very nice indeed. We start our second grid with Penny, because Jenny started the first one. They have the same amount of advantage. And the second grid is coming up right now on your screen. German-born composers. I was in Germany. I went to a concert given by Hermann Hanke, who is the famous three-handed pianist. He doesn't play any better, but he can turn his own pages. Let's have a look at 16 answers. Some of these composers were born in Germany, 5 were not. Which of these composers were born in Germany? Penny, pick me a German-born composer, please.
Johann Sebastian Bach.
Johann Sebastian Bach, you say, is German-born. His Bach is worse than his bite. Johann. Correct. £300 in the bank.
George Frederick Handel.
George Frederick Handel, who became, I think, a British citizen at the age of 41. Handel. Yes, he was, in fact, born in Germany, but as I say, he did actually become a British citizen on his 41st birthday. And his wife gave him some leather mittens, making him the first Handel with kid gloves. I'm sorry, Penny. I'm paid by the joke. £350 is in your bank account. Do you want to make it 400, or do you want to pass?
Well, I'd rather have Ludwig van Beethoven,
You
please.
like Ludwig van Beethoven. You believe him to be German-born. Ludwig was indeed German-born, was Beethoven. Good, good, good.
And then I'd like Richard Wagner.
Wagner. Rather unpleasant man by all accounts, but nevertheless a great, great German composer. He was born in Germany, wasn't he, Wagner? I don't think Hitler would have made him his favourite if he hadn't been born in Germany. £450 in the bank for Penny.
And then I'd like Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart.
You would. Now, you have £450 in the bank. You're prepared to bet that whole 450 that Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart was German-born. Are you right or wrong? Oh, he was Austrian-born.
I wondered about that.
Well, it has cost you £450 to discover that very fascinating fact. Barry?
Yes.
7 correct answers on the grid. 4 wipeouts. What you can pick?
Johannes Brahms.
Johannes Brahms. Well, those of us who are not Brahms and Liszt are quite sure that Johannes Brahms was German-born. And he was. £50. What do you say, Barry?
Engelbert Humperdinck.
Engelbert Humperdinck. This, of course, is the original composer of Hansel and Gretel, after which the singer Jerry Dorsey was named. Engelbert Humperdinck. Yes, it was German-born. You now have £100 in the bank. 5 correct answers remain.
Felix Mendelssohn.
Felix Mendelssohn, not the one with his Hawaiian serenaders that some of our older viewers might remember, but the Mendelssohn of so many wonderful serenades. Felix was indeed German-born. You have £150 in the bank. 4 correct answers, 4 wrong ones.
It's getting tight. Richard Strauss.
Strauss, yes. Not Johann Strauss, not the Austrian lot, not the Viennese lot. Richard Strauss. Very German indeed. Composer of Till Eulenspiegel, as I remember, while you're considering. 3 correct answers up there, 4 wipeouts. Play or pass?
Pass.
Pass. Jenny,
Again.
you have £250 to play with, darling. You could hit one of those 4 wipeouts unless you can find one of the 3 correct ones.
I'll go for Offenbach.
Offenbach. Well, if Jacques Offenbach was German-born, you'll have £300 in the bank. Otherwise, it's Pittsville. Jacques Offenbach. Yes, well played. £300 you have. Play or pass?
I'm not as brave as them, so I'm going to pass.
Well, Penny, there are 2 correct answers on the grid, and there are 4 composers who were not born in Germany to avoid.
I shall say Robert Schumann.
Robert Schumann. Schumann. German-born, Robert? Yes, thank goodness for that. £50 in the bank for Penny.
Anton Bruckner.
Oh, you are now seized with fear.
Yes, I am terrified.
But I will put you out of your misery swiftly as I can. Bruckner! All your fears have been realized, Penny. Bruckner, I'm afraid, was born again in Austria, not in Germany. And so we pass to, oh, Barry, £200 at risk. 3 wrong answers looking at you.
I've
One
only just
right
got
one.
that 200.
Go on, which is it?
Oh.
Frederick Chopin, James Last, Frederick Delius, Bela Bartok. One is right.
Frederick Delius.
You say it's Frederick Delius. Beautiful, beautiful composer of Lark Arising and so many lovely, lovely, lovely things. Delius! Fred was British of German descent. He's buried near Lympney, I believe. Jenny, £300. 1 correct answer, 2 incorrect. Which is the right one? Bela Bartok, Frederick Chopin, James Last.
I think I'm going to go for Bela Bartok.
Go for Bela Bartok.
I've got a feeling.
If it's a wipeout, you lose your 300 quid. Bella, Bella! Naughty, inconsiderate Bela Bartok was Hungarian, I'm afraid. And now we come to you, Penny. You must decide between Frederick Chopin and James Last, which was born in Germany.
Oh, Frederick Chopin.
If you're right about it being Frederick Chopin, then you'll have 50 quid. If you're wrong, you're wrong. Chopin. Chopin was Polish. James Last was born in Germany. And so we have this exciting situation. Look at all that's in the bank. Heaven knows how we're going to pay for this. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, Barry, I'm afraid you gave us the fewest correct answers. You see, Penny gave us 10 correct answers and Jenny gave us 6. But you gave us 5 very good answers. I thought they were splendid. But it means that I have to say to you, hey, listen, you won't be leaving us empty-handed. In fact, you'll need both hands because we want you to carry our bin bags on your way out. And if you rummage through one of them very carefully, you'll find this delightful Irish crystal paperweight. Thanks for playing Wipeout.
Thanks. Been a
Did you
pleasure.
enjoy yourself?
Yep, great.
Wonderful. It's Penny versus Jenny. They're going to make a bid for the grid now. After scanning 12 answers on the Wipeout screen, they'll try to predict how many correct choices they can make. And the higher bidder, of course, will play. One wrong decision, control of the grid will pass to the other player. Here's the subject of the auction, and it is Kenny Everett, one of the greatest comedy entertainers, the best disc jockeys I think this country's ever had. Lovely Kenny Everett. Which of these characters were played by Kenny Everett? Let's see them. 8 Kenny created, 4 he did not. Which of these were characters played by Kenny Everett? Penny, how many can you correctly identify?
4.
Jenny, can you do better than that?
I'll go for 5.
Penny, will you let Jenny play, or do you want a bit higher?
I'll let Jenny play.
Jenny, 5 characters played by Kenny Everett, starting now, please.
Gizzard Puke.
Gizzard Puke. One of my favourites. Yes, Gizzard Puke.
Cupid Stunt.
Yes, let's see if you're right about that one. You are. 3 more.
Marcel Wave.
Marcel Wave, the very, very French hairdresser. Marcel Wave, yes. 2 more, and the grid is 1.
Sid Snot.
Sid Snot. I think so. And 1 more, you've got it, Jenny.
Captain Kremen.
Captain Kremen of the Space Command. Captain Kremen, come on in. Yes, well played. Way with the Wipeouts, Kenny never played Ivor Nastykoff or No Offence or General Commotion or Haircut. But the other 3 up there would have been correct answers. Well, now, as you can see, Jenny leads Penny 1 grid to 0. She gets the first bid on our second grid. Here's the title. Poems. Which of these are types of poems? Here come the answers. 8 of these are types of poems. 4 are not. Jenny, how many can you name?
4.
Penny, can you name more than 4?
6.
6, says Penny. Jenny, do you want a bit higher than 6?
No, over to Penny.
Over to Penny for 6 types of poems, starting now, please, Penny.
Sonnet.
Sonnet, a poem of 14 lines. Sonnet.
Ode.
Ode, a simple poem, sometimes by Cyril Fletcher, an odd ode.
Ballad.
Ballad, a simple narrative poem called a ballad.
Epic.
Epic. Is an epic a long narrative poem? It is. 2 more correct answers, Penny, and you'll win the grid.
Georgic.
Did you say Georgic?
I think so. Yeah, I did.
Thank you. Georgic it is. A poem on rural affairs. 1 more correct answer, you've got it.
Roundelay.
A roundelay. If roundelay is indeed a poem, then you've won the grid. If roundelay is not a poem, but a song, then control of the grid will pass to Jenny. Roundelay. Roundelay is a song with a refrain sung in the round. 1 correct answer from you, Jenny, and you'll steal the grid.
Epigram.
Epigram. If epigram is indeed a poem, then you will have the grid 1, and you will play for your dream destination on this program. Epigram. Yes, it is. The dictionary definition of epigram is a short poem expressing an ingenious thought. These were the Wipeouts. Obeyed, which is a sunrise song, Barcarolle, which is a song from a gondolier, and Kabuki, which is a Japanese drama. So Jenny wins this round of the game, and we have to say a reluctant goodbye to Penny as you depart with these superb champagne glasses, Penny.
Oh.
I'll have tears in my eyes, but there you are. Envy affects people in different ways. Thank you for this.
Just what I wanted.
Jenny, joining at the game control. Jenny is a mum, and she cooks and she does DIY, and she comes from
Nuneaton in Warwickshire.
Nuneaton, which describes my wife's meals. A single. Not true at all. Actually, my wife's rather a good cook, but that doesn't get laughs. Now, your dream destination.
Well, I believe I put Egypt, but it's just one place I've always really wanted to go.
Egypt?
So, yes.
Well,
Yeah.
we shall make out your air ticket to Egypt, and we hope you enjoy seeing the Sphinx and the pyramids, and that you hit the Nile on the head. Let's see what categories you have to choose from. Entertainment, natural world, literature. Ooh, potluck.
I think I'll go for entertainment, Bob.
And so would I. Which branch of entertainment? Let's find out. James Bond. We're going to show you the names of 12 actors. Here they come now. Which of these actors have played James Bond in a feature film? Not on TV, but in a feature film. We want 6 of them. We want to see the number 6 up there. Well, you see it now, Jenny?
Yeah.
We have Bob's Blob, the 1 minute up there on the right-hand corner. I'll count off the seconds as you go. You ready to try?
Yes, I'm ready.
I've got your ticket to Egypt in my hand. Good luck. You have a minute to win it starting now. And Jenny goes straight for George Lazenby and Roger Moore and Timothy Dalton. Now she's taking a look, and she's got to use 10 seconds. Pierce Brosnan, Sean Connery. Taking a look round the others. Only a quarter of a minute elapsed. Find James Fox. Press Bob's button, and we have 5 right. 1 is wrong. Take out the one you're uncertain about, try another one. Peter Sellers goes in, only half a minute is used. 5 right, 1 is wrong. Take out the one you think is wrong, put in something is right. And are you going to Egypt? You are! Well done, Jenny. Well done. Oh, never mind where the cards go. You're going to Egypt.
Oh, great.
Or wherever you want to go. We'll make out your air
Thank
ticket
you.
to your chosen destination.
Wonderful.
You're a hard-working mum, and it will be nice for you
We'll
and
get
your
a
husband
break.
to get a little break. And I'm sure your children will be cheering you on at this minute. Thank you very much. Our Jenny,
Thank
ladies
you.
and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll leave you now with a quote from the immortal Mae West. Love cures everything except poverty and toothache. That wipes me out. Till next time.
BBC One will be delivering the goods again tomorrow morning, and this afternoon wedding plans are underway in Lion Country at 2:10. Then, as the snooker hots up in Sheffield, we'll be there to watch it live from 2:35.
Why am I always thinking of you?
If it's going to happen, I want to know about it.
I think about you every minute of every day. It's like I'm working on autopilot.
If you're given one chance, don't waste it.
I wouldn't expect to meet someone like a Sumpter again. I can't let you go.
Unmissable Ballykissangel, Sunday at 8 on BBC One, and concluding Bank Holiday Monday.
It's a tough job, but someone has to do it.
Stunt performer.
Taking the knocks and learning to roll with it.
You're on your own. Good luck.
Monty Don is flat out on his quest to become a movie stuntman.
I genuinely dread this.
Hold on tight, it's holiday Fasten Your Seatbelt, tonight at 7 on BBC One.
It's time for the 1 o'clock news now on BBC One with Edward Sturton.
A warning for parents after some of the country's best-selling baby walkers fail safety tests. Good afternoon. Owners of the 10 brands involved have been warned to stop their children using them immediately. The other headlines: aid agencies are digesting the latest evidence of the threat of famine in the Sudan. A big jump in convictions for cruelty to animals. And could this consign the dentist drill to the scrap heap? The government has told the makers of baby walkers they must take action to meet safety standards. The warning came after trading standards officers in Liverpool said some of Britain's best-selling baby walkers have failed safety tests. They said parents should stop their children using the 10 makes they've named immediately, but the Baby Products Association said the report was causing alarm without enough evidence.
Hundreds of thousands of baby walkers are in everyday use in households around the UK. No fault's been found with the one shown here, but today's warning that 10 other top-selling brands have defects causing them to fail safety tests is bound to cause alarm. Official tests by trading standards officers found 50 out of 54 samples failed to comply with the British safety standard for baby walkers, for example, being unstable or lacking proper warnings of the product's potential dangers. Those that failed are listed as Bebop Albion with activity tray, ABC Design Activity Walker, Chico 63098, Brevi Speedy, Silver Cross Safari, Baby Club New Walking Trainer, Mio Bambino, Mamas and Papas, Mio Bambino Walk and Play, Scallywags, and Petite Star Gym Bar or Toy Bar. But officers acknowledge it's difficult for parents to know whether the model they have is a hazard without getting advice from manufacturers.
And our advice to parents is, if they have one of these models, not to use it until they receive a firm assurance from the producer that it actually complies with the British safety standard.
But the manufacturers have hit back, saying safety tests weren't carried out properly, and they've set up hotlines so that, in their view, any unnecessary fears can be allayed. Nicola Carslaw, BBC News.
And the Consumer Affairs Minister Nigel Griffiths joins us from Westminster. Nigel Griffiths, are you happy with the way trading standards officers have handled this?
Yes, I am. And my safety experts at the Department of Trade and Industry have been liaising with the trading standards officers throughout. The tests have been carried out by the most reputable test houses, and we lead the world in safety. The manufacturers and distributors should address these real concerns and should ensure that only products which do meet the British safety standards are on the market.
What about the point made by the Baby Products Association, or the accusation they make that this report has caused, as they put it, alarm without sufficient evidence?
The evidence is certainly there, and I'm alarmed that they're not addressing the real concerns. The best advice we can give parents is that as long as you closely supervise your child in one of these baby walkers, then your child should be perfectly safe. And that would go for the widest range of products. But we want to see the distributors, the retailers and others address this problem seriously. And that's why with these hotlines, which I'm pleased to say that manufacturers have set up, the hotlines will allow parents to check with them. But we're making sure that every trading standards department in every council in the country has a list of the 10 products which you've highlighted, so that concerned parents can contact them and check whether their product's on the list.
And how has it come to the point where, without really very much warning, quite so many brands should be named as being potentially unsafe?
That's because a great deal of work has been put in over the past weeks and indeed months by trading standards officers. They've been in dialogue with the distributors, and my own department has had 3 meetings with distributors to present the findings to them. The government safety experts are convinced that the tests are valid, and the manufacturers and distributors must now address them. If they fail to address them, then of course they face prosecution because they would have failed the product safety regulation requirements.
Nigel Griffiths, thanks very much indeed. The 2 biggest political parties in Northern Ireland have welcomed the news that Chris Patten has been asked to chair the Commission on the Future of Policing there. The former Conservative Party chairman and governor of Hong Kong has been approached by the government to take on the job, subject to next month's referendum on the Stormont Agreement.
Chris Patten's probably best known as the last governor of Hong Kong, but he also served as a junior minister at the Northern Ireland office in the mid-1980s. He's been asked by the government to head a commission into the future of policing in the province, which will include international representation. The Northern Ireland Secretary at a public engagement confirmed that she had asked Mr Patten to join the commission, and she explained why she'd gone for him.
I wanted somebody that was had status, that people could tell that we thought this was a very important commission, because the service that the RUC have given over the years has been exceptional. And I want the options for the future to be carefully considered. And I think Mr Patten is that person.
The future of the RUC is one of the major matters of concern for unionists, but the Ulster Unionist leader was content with the situation.
Chris Patten to head it, it shows very clearly that this is not going to be an international commission, that it's going to be a commission very firmly within the orbit of a British consideration of the matter.
Unionists believe the RUC has performed superbly in the face of decades of terrorism, and they're deeply concerned about just how far reforms might go, while nationalists want reform in what they see as an unbalanced force. The agreement said there was an opportunity for a new beginning in policing, but that any recommendations would be discussed with the Northern Ireland parties. The main Nationalist Party launched its Yes to the Agreement campaign, thumbs up the theme. Its leader said the agreement involved principled compromise, not compromised principles.
We believe that Unionists and Nationalists do not only owe it to themselves to vote yes, we all owe it to each other if we want to create a positive future rather than recycle the negative past.
Mr. Hume said he was not asking for a party vote, but for people to vote for themselves and their children by saying yes in next month's referendum. Dennis Murney, BBC News, Belfast.
Britain's trade gap with the rest of the world is at its worst level since the last recession. There was a deficit of £2.2 billion in February, twice the figure for January. The strong pound is being blamed, and exporters say there are even worse times ahead.
Scion makes the ultimate yuppie icon, the personal organiser, or palm-top computer, as it's now rather grandly known. More than half the machines produced here go for export. But the strength of the pound means that overseas sales now bring in less money. Last year, that reduced Scion's profits by £6 million.
Last year, the proportion of our sales, so this is in 1997, the proportion of our sales in international markets increased up to some 55% of our total sales. And that's a trend we see continuing as we move forward, and we're driving that. But the strength of sterling hinders our ability in that.
The strong pound not only makes it more difficult to export, it's also sucking in cheap imports at an alarming rate. Overall, Britain's trading position is at its worst for more than 5 years. In service industries like tourism, Britain still runs a trade surplus, earning more at home than it spends overseas. But even that's changing, and it doesn't make up for the gloom now settling over manufacturing companies. The latest survey from the Confederation of British Industry warns there's worse to come.
We're seeing prospects, demand, all falling at rates we've not seen for things like 8 years or even 18 years. And we're seeing export prices fall at a greater rate over these last 4 months than in the 40 years of the survey.
The evidence needs to be treated with caution. The CBI has been accused of a negative bias in its surveys, and Scion faces as much trouble from new competitors as it does from the strong pound. But Britain's trade deficit is very large, and it's suddenly become much larger. Greg Wood, BBC News.
Charity workers have been holding emergency meetings this morning to decide how to tackle the growing crisis in Sudan. A telephone hotline for donations is being set up to try to help some of the 700,000 people facing famine because of the country's civil war. Later we'll be speaking to agency workers and the Bishop of Bradford, whose diocese has special links with Sudan. This was how Martin Dawes described the situation there in his report for last night's 9 o'clock news.
Aid is here, but it's little and not for all. At a feeding centre for children, an 18-year-old man begs to be allowed in. He's walked here and says his mother, still in the village, is in a worse condition. The mother of baby Adong has starved to death, says his gran. A rattle is all she has to distract him from the pain he's feeling. Children and mothers wait in the searing heat. This is an aid operation struggling to get established. When it started 2 weeks ago, the centre was treating 300 under 5s. The number has now more than trebled.
Well, earlier I spoke to Jane Cockin from Oxfam and I asked her for her reaction to the Martin Dawes report.
The pictures that Martin Dawes showed us last night bear out our understanding of the situation. The people we saw on the film are undoubtedly the worst affected in a situation which is extremely difficult in any case because of the environment and because of the conflict.
Now, you've been discussing this morning. What sort of ideas have you come up with?
Well, Oxfam, along with many agencies, has been working for a long time in Sudan, both in rebel and non-rebel areas. We try and support people both with immediate needs and also, importantly, with the means of sustaining their lives in the longer term.
But is aid actually what's needed at the moment? Isn't it more a question of actually getting the aid through?
It is a question of two things. It's a question of a peaceful resolution of the conflict and, yes, indeed, being able to deliver aid to those people who are most affected.
So it is a political issue as well as one for the aid agencies?
We are looking at a situation where even without conflict, people can cope, they can just get by. The conflict makes life even more difficult for them. And so, yes, we are looking at two situations which contribute to each other.
Well, the Sudanese government's restrictions on aid flights in order to prevent supplies getting to rebel forces is clearly a key problem being faced by aid workers. Our diplomatic correspondent, James Robbins, has been examining the attempts being made to resolve the crisis.
Many of the starving people in southern Sudan could be saved, but only if the Sudanese government allows much more food in more quickly. Today, this is the scene at one of a string of stores and warehouses in neighbouring Kenya. Aid agencies, including Médecins Sans Frontières, have food and medicines, but the Sudanese are imposing a tight squeeze on flights. The Islamic government is starving the entire population to damage the rebel Christian forces who are fighting for autonomy.
If there is no more aid, the chances are probably small, and in the coming weeks and months, it's really going to be a major crisis.
I'm calling from UNICEF.
In Britain, the big aid agencies are gearing up to take in individual donations. They hope governments will increase pressure on Sudan to let much more of the aid through. UNICEF in London say they urgently need money for more supplies. Young children are most at risk.
It costs £14 to help a child for a week, and that supplies them with the food that they need, with the blankets, with the medical care. We need money from the public, and we need money from the government to make up this £2 million for our emergency appeal.
The people of southern Sudan face catastrophe because they're caught up in a civil war which has been running on and off for more than 40 years. The people here, mostly Christian, have little in common racially or culturally with the Muslims who control the entire country from Khartoum. But in the great capital on the Nile, there's little obvious mood for compromise, so hundreds of thousands are in danger of becoming the victims of famine created by political intolerance. James Robbins, BBC News.
Well, I'm joined now by the Bishop of Bradford, the Right Reverend David Smith, who's in our Leeds studio. Bishop, I believe your diocese has, as we said a moment ago, special links with Sudan. You've been there recently yourself. What do you see as the essence of this problem? Is it essentially a political problem?
Very largely a political problem. I believe that the British government has a tremendous responsibility here to take an initiative, both diplomatic and political, because the aid is there. The opportunity for getting the aid to the people in need is not there, and the government of Sudan and the rebel leaders need to be brought to account.
Do you believe that the British government is fulfilling what you say is its responsibility in that respect at the moment?
My impression is that the British government's attitude officially is to be cool and distant to Sudan. Understandable, because Sudan has a bad human rights record, is accused of harbouring terrorists, and the rumours say Saddam Hussein has transferred some of his assets to Sudan. Be that as it may, the humanitarian situation is now so awful that I believe the British government has an enormous responsibility to take an initiative, political and humanitarian.
Well, be a bit more specifics, particularly on the political front. What do you actually want them to do?
I think that they ought to have direct talks with the government in Sudan in one way or another. Certainly the government of Sudan does comprise people who appear to have few principles, but there are other members there who I believe are genuinely devout Muslims and who are concerned about the situation. And it is all very well saying we're part of an international approach. The British are held in very high regard in Sudan in a way that some other Western countries are not. And I would like to see a very strong initiative taken now directly with the government of Sudan by Her Majesty's government.
Well, Bishop, thank you very much indeed. And I'm now joined from Westminster by the International Development Secretary, Claire Short. Claire Short, you heard what the Bishop had to say there. Care to respond?
I'm afraid it's not, I understand his feelings, but it's not a very informed position. There's a major political initiative by all the neighbouring African governments that are leading the quest for a settlement. They're in a better position, have more moral authority. Talks were held before. The trouble is the leadership of neither side want peace, so that's what the people need. There's plenty of aid available. The problem is that governments deliberately won't let it through and are deliberately causing starving. Talks are about to begin again on Sunday. I think the big push we should all make is that the very first challenge to the government of Sudan is to let in major resources, not just by flights but by road, and then we can move massive amounts of food very quickly. Otherwise, there's large numbers of people hungry now, and it could get worse. Britain should help, but this isn't the days of the old empire when Britain comes charging in. We've got to back this African initiative, and we need far more international pressure on both sides to come to the table and reach a peaceful settlement. This war has been going on since 1983. There's been massive suffering, and it will continue unless we can get peace.
And you are quite satisfied that the British government at the moment is doing absolutely everything it can in terms of turning the political heat up on the government of Sudan?
I don't think anyone can ever say we're doing everything we can when we see such suffering. Everyone must try harder. But this is not for Britain to lead. It's for us to back this African initiative, to get the EU to put on more pressure together, all of us, to back in the UN an initiative to pressurise both sides. Everyone should try harder to put pressure on the two sides to get a peaceful settlement. And in the meantime, we need instant pressure to say, stop playing games, political games with people's survival, let through the aid that's already there. And the final thing I'd say to the charities is, please don't use this for your own purposes to start trying to get funding. Let's work together to get food to the people.
Is there anything at all that people sitting at home watching those very distressing images can do themselves to help?
I think, of course, contribute to appeals. I think write to everyone in sight, including the UN Secretary General, by all means, members of the government, the opposition, the Sudanese government, anyone you can think of in a position of power. If people all over the world put pressure on the government of Sudan, those that back them, the Christian forces in the south who need to come together and be more interested in a peaceful settlement, then good would come out of this terrible crisis.
Pleasure. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Time is 18 minutes past 1. Later in the programme, are we still a nation of animal lovers? New figures show a dramatic rise in cruelty cases. And the British Jews who went to found a nation 50 years ago. Our image as a nation of animal lovers was shattered today by RSPCA figures which show a big increase in cruelty cases. More than 2,000 people were convicted of mistreating animals last year, and the Society is worried about the sentences they're getting. You may find some of the pictures in this report distressing.
Out for a morning walk with his owner and a picture of good health. But just a few months ago, Digby the Old English sheepdog looked like this, almost bald through chronic mange and neglect. He'd been ill for 6 weeks, but his owner, who was later banned from keeping animals for life, had failed to take him to the vet.
When I saw the pictures, he was in a terrible state, and I was shocked. They said he looked like an alien, but yeah, now he's fully grown, he's back to normal.
And cruelty cases like Digby's are on the increase. Some of the worst, say the RSPCA, include 170 pigs who were left to die in filthy conditions in a farm shed in Kent, a Jack Russell puppy who was found beaten to death by its owner, and a hedgehog mutilated with a stick by a 16-year-old schoolboy.
Despite the education that goes out, the publicity that goes out towards treatment, welfare, care of animals, time after time you come across the same sort of complaints.
But whilst convictions for animal cruelty have gone up, the RSPCA is concerned that in 1/5 of cases, courts don't use the powers they have to ban people from keeping animals.
The RSPCA sees disqualification as an important part of the prosecution process, and it's distressing to us when offenders are not disqualified.
It's programmes like the BBC's Animal Hospital, which says the charity has raised people's awareness of animal cruelty and led to more cases being reported. Sadly, too often the animal can't be saved, but there are some very happy rescue stories, and Digby's is certainly one of them. Arabella Schnadhorst, BBC News.
And the vet Tessa Bailey, familiar to viewers of the BBC's Animal Hospital series, joins me now from the RSPCA hospital at Putney in London. Tessa Bailey, were you surprised by the evidence that cruelty is getting worse?
Well, not surprised, but very saddened. We see far too many cruelty cases here already, from neglect cases like Digby's to gross cruelty. We've had a dog thrown out of a 7th floor window, kittens thrown against the wall, dogs stabbed, burnt, you know, really gross cruelty, and it's still going on.
So this idea that we are a nation of animal lovers is just a fond imagination, is it?
No, I think the majority of us are animal lovers, and the majority of people really do care, but there's a small minority who don't understand that animals are sensitive, feeling creatures, and they don't know how to treat them properly.
And do you think tougher penalties by the courts is the way to deal with it?
Tougher penalties, particularly protecting animals from being rehomed to people who've already been prosecuted. I think once somebody has been grossly cruel to an animal, they shouldn't be allowed to have another one to do it to them again.
It does raise the question, doesn't it, if someone has done something ghastly to an animal of the kind you describe, why on earth they should want to have one again?
Well, people do, and you know, they sometimes don't realise, they think it won't happen again. If they get a different dog, it'll be better behaved and they won't be frustrated by it. And sadly, people aren't always thinking ahead to, you know, the next 12, 18 years of that animal's life.
Tessa Bailey, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
This week, Israel celebrates the 50th anniversary of the founding of the Jewish state. After the Second World War, tens of thousands of Jews fled persecution in Eastern Europe to help build their new country. But a few, inspired by the Zionist project, also came from Britain.
1 month before Israel came into being, British Jews established the kibbutz of Kfar Hanassi. Outposts of pioneering socialism, the kibbutzim staked out the borders of the future state. At Kfar Hanassi, they cleared the rocky land of the Galilee with their bare hands. Michael Cohen was here from the start. At 76, he says he's a retired pioneer. Zionism and socialism drew the young Jew from Glasgow to what was then Palestine.
There were no trees, there were no houses, there were no huts, there were no anything. See, we even looked like pioneers.
In 1952, Michael Cohen met the country's first Prime Minister, David Ben-Gurion. In those days, kibbutzniks were the essence of the state.
We were both building the country on the border, cultivating the country on the border, we were guarding the country on the border, and we were populating the country on the border, which means we really were in the forefront of building the state.
50 years after Israel's independence, Jews from Britain and elsewhere are still settling the land. But this land is the West Bank, captured by Israel in 1967. Those who settle here do so against the will of the international community and at some personal risk. Zachai and Boaz Hamilton are going home from school. It's a short journey from the neighboring settlement of Shiloh, but there's always a soldier to ride with them. Laurie and Yaffa Hamilton arrived in the West Bank 4 years ago. It's a far cry from Manchester, but the Hamiltons are not looking back.
I do believe we have a right to be here, but I don't mind the Arabs also having their place here, as long as they just leave us alone to live in peace.
For all the apparent danger, the Hamiltons feel safer here than in England.
People are friendly, it's our people, and that's why we feel good with them. It's safe to live here.
The frontier spirit is still alive, but being practiced in occupied territory. Kibbutzniks and settlers are both pioneers, but represent two very different visions of Israel. Paul Adams, BBC News, on the West Bank.
The Welsh Assembly will be built on a site close to the waterfront at Cardiff Bay. The new building will be alongside the historic pierhead in the old docks area, now redeveloped as a business centre. Architects will be invited to enter a competition to design the chamber, but it won't be ready in time for the first elections in May next year. British researchers say fillings could be a thing of the past following the discovery of a new way of combating tooth decay. A team from Guy's Hospital in London have developed an antibacterial formula which, when painted onto patients' teeth during trials, protected them against decay for up to 4 months.
Scientists at Guy's Hospital in London have for some time been working on producing a new formula from genetically modified tobacco plants. They've been crossbred to form an antibody. This protein, when painted onto a patient's teeth, attaches itself to the bacteria which cause tooth decay and prevents them from sticking to the teeth.
We've been able to make this complex protein secretory antibody. Now, these types of antibodies are normally found in all our secretions, and they protect us against chest infections, gut infections, throat infections. And by using plants, we've been able to make this antibody in the plants in large quantities that we can use in the clinic.
You wouldn't have had Dentists say there are still many questions to be answered. For example, how often should teeth be treated? Long-term clinical trials are underway, but even if it can eliminate tooth decay, dentists say they'll still have a job to do.
Dentists still have the ravages of past decay in the population to deal with and to repair. We still have gum diseases, periodontal diseases to take care of, to prevent and to treat. We still have to look after diseases of the mucous membrane of the mouth, including cancer. There's much to be done.
Dentistry has come a long way since its early beginnings. These porcelain teeth here would have been state-of-the-art in the mid-19th century. And in fact, many of these dentures here are relatively modern. If indeed this research does spell the end of tooth decay, then drills, fillings and dentures will be forever consigned to history. Richard Hannaford, BBC News at the British Dental Association.
And you can see more about that new method of fighting tooth decay on Tomorrow's World on BBC One tomorrow night at 7:30. And at 27 minutes past 1, the main news again. Trading standards officers have warned parents not to use 10 brands of baby walkers after they failed safety tests. Aid agencies are considering how to alleviate the crisis in Sudan, where 700,000 people are facing famine. And there's been a dramatic rise in the number of convictions for cruelty to animals. That's all this Tuesday lunchtime. From the 1 o'clock news, good afternoon.
Hello there, good afternoon. Well, some nasty thunderstorms again today, but we can expect a change in the weather. We'll see this front bringing a spell of rather more general cloud, wind and rain into the southwest for a time, but once that goes south again for Thursday, we'll start to see a change as this ridge of high pressure topples southeast across Britain. Now that means hopefully things should settle down quite nicely for the end of the week with some warm sunshine, but that's a long way off at the moment. We've still got a lot of unsettled, rather disturbed weather across Britain. Over the last few hours, the clouds really have been building and bubbling up. We've seen some quite potent thunderstorms across parts of Western Moray and Eastern Highland, and also down the spine of the Pennines. And I think still some heavy and thundery showers to come for the afternoon. Almost anywhere could get them really. Quite slow moving and heavy downpours expected. But I think come the end of the afternoon and evening, I think skies clearing a little bit in the far southwest. Now, temperature-wise, well, feeling quite chilly if you get caught in one of those heavy downpours, but when the sun pokes through, temperatures getting up to a reasonable, well, 14 or 15. That's the high 50s Fahrenheit. Now, a light southerly breeze again today, but a change in wind direction later on today and tonight. A fresh easterly wind developing along the south coast as that change in the weather arrives. Quite heavy rain, actually, in Devon and Cornwall by breakfast time tomorrow. For the rest of Britain, though, things should turn clearer, and I think we will see a touch of ground frost again through parts of Northern Ireland, southern Scotland and northern England. And then for tomorrow, well, again, still some showers expected across northwestern parts of the British Isles. Some heavy ones too for the afternoon. But down to the southwest, we've got that wet weather to keep an eye on. A chance of some heavy rain for southwestern parts of England and Wales. But I think for southeastern areas of England and up into the Midlands, just a few spots, I think, getting in during the course of the afternoon. And then for the rest of the week, well, hopefully things improving. We'll eventually see that area of cloud pushing its way down into France and things settling down and warming up for the end of the week. But on the weather show, it's all action, volcanoes and earthquakes.
Sleep, little willow.
Photography changed my life.
Follow.
You've got to click on the moment, not before it and not after it. For me, it just came from my inners, as they say.
Grow to the heavens.
A good photograph to me is, or a good any visual, is something that will make you react.
As a tribute to the late Linda McCartney, BBC One presents another chance to see the Arena programme dedicated to her photography. Linda McCartney, Behind the Lens. Sunday 11:15, BBC One.
With news and stories from the South East now on BBC One, here's Gillian Joseph.
Two boys die after a wall collapses on them. Neighbours say it was an accident waiting to happen. Good afternoon. Two boys have died after a wall collapsed on them this morning as they played on their way to school. The accident happened on land belonging to a property development company near Sittingbourne in Kent. Fire crews battled to save them, but the boys died before they reached hospital. Kate Stevens reports from the scene.
Today, people here in Kemsley are in a state of shock. Two young local boys have lost their lives on derelict land, land that people here have been complaining about for years. It took the fire brigade 3 hours to free the bodies of the two youngsters aged 11 and 14. A friend who was with them raised the alarm, and local residents in desperation tried to rescue the two boys who lived nearby with their bare hands.
Shocked, numb, just can't believe it's happened. Thought it might happen one day because the kids are always out there playing, and there is a lot of rubbish and debris and brick, rubble, you know, out there.
It was here in this old orchard where the accident happened. The boys had been standing on this brick wall, which used to be a communal wash house. After years of disuse, it collapsed.
The fire brigade used some heavy lifting equipment and managed to free the bodies from the rubble, and they'll be taken. There'll be a post-mortem later.
Residents have complained about the waste site, but for more than 20 years it's been left untouched. This shocked community now wants the land cleared. Kate Stevens, Newsroom South East, Kemsley.
Now Kate is still at the scene and joins me live. What's the latest situation?
Well, the two boys' bodies have now been taken away. The fire brigade have left, has had the police. The area is now cleared, the cordon has been taken away. But people here have gone into their houses and they're still obviously in a state of shock because these two boys did live literally streets away from here.
We did receive some details about a third boy that was involved. Do you know anything about that?
Yes, we know that a third boy was with the two boys. We think they were playing, but it hasn't been confirmed yet. Police are now talking to him, trying to get a clearer picture of how this tragic accident happened. Obviously, the boy himself is in shock, so it's going to take police some time to actually get the statement from him.
Have the family at all spoken today?
No, the two boys haven't officially been identified. Obviously, the police have got to notify all kin, and we just don't know their names yet.
Kate, thank you. The family of a care worker who was stabbed to death by a schizophrenic in Surrey have received an apology from the health authority involved. Katie Sullivan died in 1992 after being attacked by a woman patient at a hospital in Kingston upon Thames. Her family have campaigned for Kingston and Richmond Health Authority to show remorse for the way it handled the case. The authority says it'll issue a public apology tonight. An inquest opened today on two window cleaners who died when their cradle collapsed outside a Midland bank in the city. 52-year-old Robert Wright from Essex and 31-year-old Peter Docking from Kent were killed in the accident last Wednesday. The hearing of the City of London Coroner's Court was adjourned for a full inquest to be held in several months' time. Hospitals in the region are to get more than £90 million to reduce waiting lists by April next year. The North Thames region will receive almost £44 million. South Thames, including Kent, gets just over £41 million, and Oxfordshire and Berkshire almost £7 million. The government money will be spent on reducing the number of people waiting for routine operations. Meanwhile, struggling bus services in Kent are also to receive a £1.2 million cash injection from the government. People living in rural areas have seen cuts to services which are subsidised by the council. The government announced in the budget it was spending £50 million to improve local transport. Services in Oxfordshire will also benefit with a payout of nearly £1 million. The Conservatives have revealed how they plan to choose their candidate for Mayor of London. It's expected the decision will be left entirely to party members in the capital rather than being imposed by the leadership.
William Hague has already promised members the final say, but the method used could affect the outcome. A single hustings meeting would benefit a candidate like Geoffrey Archer, experienced at performing at big events. Others would prefer a postal ballot to maximise the number of members involved.
I'm not going to dictate who the candidate for mayor for London should be. The members will have a free choice. We will have a system where the members can easily participate and vote.
Mr Hague hopes to embarrass the Prime Minister. Labour hasn't ruled out shortlisting candidates, allowing them to exclude hopefuls like Ken Livingstone before party members vote. Sean Lane, Newsroom South East, Westminster.
Well, if you want to keep up with the latest news on the local elections and the referendum, we have a special website. The address is www.bbc.co.uk/LondonReferendum/ and if you don't have access to the internet, you can keep up with the date on the special CFAX service starting from page 170. People living in parts of Early near Reading will today learn whether their gardens are dangerously contaminated with arsenic and cadmium. Wokingham District Council is due to announce the results of tests on vegetables grown in gardens on Station Road and Compton Close. Residents have been warned not to eat homegrown vegetables or allow children to play in their gardens. Football, and Crystal Palace's fight to stay in the Premiership ended last night when they lost 3-0 to Manchester United at Selhurst Park. It's the third time in 6 years that the Eagles have been relegated.
Going into last night's game, Palace's chances of avoiding the drop looked about as likely as United's hope of retaining the championship. For Palace fans staring into a familiar abyss, feelings of vertigo intensified when Paul Scholes put United ahead. And it was United who looked more committed to chasing a seemingly lost cause, Nicky Butt doubling Palace's woes. After that, it was target practice.
This is Beckham, who might try and curl one. He has, and it's brought a good save. Another huge gap has appeared down the middle. It's Giggs. Sheringham through to Scholes again. And again. Goal!
3 down, and the Eagles were again a Division 1 side.